Derek laughed and said, "Why is she still here? The maid should have left hours ago." Esther didn't flinch. She just placed the keys in his hand and walked out. No words, no warning. But that was the moment everything changed. What would you have done? Comment below if you've ever been underestimated. Because this isn't just her story, it might be yours too. Let's uncover this thrilling story together. My name is Esther, 74 years old. People say I carry myself with quiet strength. I don't speak much, but I see everything. When my husband passed, it was like someone pulled the sun out of the sky. 48 years of marriage. And then silence. Just me, the walls of our home, and memories too heavy to hold alone. I didn't get to fall apart. Not with Melissa standing there, tears staining her cheeks, 2 toddlers clinging to her legs. My daughter, my baby girl. She needed me. They all did. So I opened the door to our family home. The home my husband and I built brick by brick, dollar by dollar, decade after decade. I opened it wide and said, "Come in." I never looked back. There wasn't a plan. There didn't need to be. Melissa moved into her old bedroom. The children filled the house with a kind of noise that makes grief take a step back. I cooked. I did the laundry. I swept their little socks out from under the couch and folded their dreams into bedtime stories. I smiled when Melissa smiled again. I stayed up when she needed to talk. I held her hand through the dark. This house, my house, became a cradle for a second chance. And I was happy to give it. I moved my things into the smaller room downstairs, the one with the thin walls and the morning draft. It was fine. I liked hearing their laughter from above. I liked the sound of life filling the spaces that used to echo. I planted flowers in the front yard. I baked cinnamon bread on Sundays. I took the children to school, helped with homework, kissed skinned knees, sang lullabies until their eyes fluttered closed. Everything in me poured out into them. And I was glad to do it. Because when you love people, truly love them, you don't count what it costs. You just give. My husband would have done the same. He was a good man. Quiet man like me. He built this home with his bare hands. Laid the tiles. Fixed the plumbing. Cut wood for the fireplace during those long cold months. Every corner of this house still carries his fingerprints. I remember the way he used to hum when he worked in the shed. The way he held my hand when we sat on the porch swing, talking about everything and nothing. I still hear him in the creak of the floorboards. Still see him in the sunlight that hits the kitchen just right. This home holds a lifetime. Holds love, struggle, faith. And I never once thought I'd walk away from. I never once thought I'd walk away from any of it. This home wasn't just where we lived. It was where we healed. Where we began again. When Melissa met Derek, I watched her glow in a way I hadn't seen in years. He was tall, well-spoken, polished. He shook my hand the first time we met, firm grip, too confident. He called me ma'am and brought me flowers. Charm like that wears well at first. I remember Melissa's eyes after their second date, how they lit up when she said, "Mom, I think he's the one." Smiled. I wanted to believe that. For her. After everything she'd been through, maybe she deserved someone like him. They married the following spring. Small ceremony. Melissa wore ivory and laughed like a teenager. Derek thanked me during the toast. Said I was an incredible woman. I nodded politely. But something in his tone. It felt rehearsed. Still I opened the door again. They didn't have much saved up. I said, "You start here. Rent free. Just get on your feet." It wasn't a question. It was love extended again. Cleared space. Made them the master bedroom upstairs. Moved more of my things to the shed. My late husband's tools, boxes of old albums, forgotten winter clothes. I stacked them neatly out of the way. Melissa kept saying, "Just until we figure things out." He nodded. Time was nothing to me. I had more of it than they did. First it worked. Melissa started a remote job. Derek talked about launching a business. The kids were growing loud and beautiful. Our little world was noisy, but it was full. But slowly, things shifted. Derek stopped saying good morning. Then he stopped saying anything at all. He came home late, sometimes reeking of drinks I didn't recognize. He turned the music up when I was trying to sleep. Left his shoes in the hallway. Slammed doors. I folded his laundry. Cleaned up after him. Said nothing. One afternoon I baked cornbread the way Melissa liked it when she was a child. I set the table, humming to myself. I heard footsteps on the stairs, and then Derek's voice, low but sharp. "I don't know why she's still here," he said to Melissa. "She's like a shadow, a burden." I stood in the kitchen, motionless. The spoon in my hand trembled. A burden. I felt something tighten in my chest, but I swallowed it. I wiped my hands, turned off the oven, and walked away from the door quietly, so they wouldn't know I'd heard. That night, I sat in the small room downstairs. I looked around at the old family photos. My wedding ring still sat in its dish. My husband's flannel shirt hung on the chair. And for the first time in years, the house felt unfamiliar. Not because of the walls, but because of what was growing inside them. Disrespect has a smell like rot just beneath the surface. And now I could smell it everywhere. Still I stayed silent. Not because I was afraid, but because I was watching. And listening. Always listening. It started with the little things. Dinner parties became more frequent. Derek liked to impress. He'd pour drinks with one hand, toss casual jokes with the other. The living room I decorated decades ago became his showroom. My antique clock. A conversation piece. The framed cross-stitch by the stairs. Inherited charm. He told guests, "We were lucky to find a house like this. Perfect location, good bones. Took a lot of work, but it's home now." And I stood in the corner, holding a tray of cheese and crackers. Invisible. He never mentioned my name. Never said, "My mother-in-law gave us this home." Never said, "She made this possible." Melissa would glance at me sometimes, a flicker of guilt behind her eyes. But she'd just sip her wine and change the subject. They hosted barbecues, birthdays, baby showers. They smiled for cameras without me. I wasn't asked to be in the photos anymore. Once, I stepped forward as someone raised a phone to take a group picture. Derek gently placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Why don't you grab another plate of snacks, Esther?" And just like that, I wasn't part of the memory. My face never made it into the albums. I started noticing the children changing too. It wasn't their fault. They were just young, malleable, listening. I'd reach for a hug and they'd pause. One day, my youngest grandson came into the kitchen, laughing. He reached up to show me a paper crown he made. I knelt down, arms open. But before he could wrap his arms around me, Derek walked in. His voice was sharp. "Hey, don't go hugging Grandma Maid. She's busy." The boy froze, looked from me to his father, then slowly stepped back. I smiled, pretending it didn't sting. Pretending my chest wasn't collapsing inside. "Grandma Maid." He said it like it was my title, like it was all I'd ever been. I cleaned the dishes that night in silence. The warm water burned against my skin, but I let it. It was better than feeling everything else. Melissa barely looked at me anymore. She was always distracted. On her phone, rushing past me, smiling when others were around, quiet when we were alone. I tried to talk to her once. "Is everything okay?" "Yes." She nodded too quickly. "Of course, Mom. Everything's fine." But her eyes didn't meet mine. They never did anymore. That night I sat alone on the back porch. The wind moved through the trees, same as always. The porch light flickered like it used to when my husband fixed it with electrical tape instead of replacing the bulb. Everything looked the same. But it wasn't. Something in the walls had changed. Something in them. I wasn't their anchor anymore. I was the background. The shadow. The maid. But I saw it. I saw everything. And I remembered every word. Because quiet doesn't mean weak. And silence doesn't mean surrender. It only means you're giving someone just enough rope. It was the way Derek looked at her. The softness in his voice when he whispered to his phone late at night. The half-smiles he gave Melissa when she was busy with the kids' calls. The hushed words. The ones he thought I couldn't hear. One evening I walked past the study. I saw him. Saw the phone screen lit up, reflecting his eyes. His fingers tapping, quick, with a familiar energy. He looked up at the doorframe, startled, like a man caught in a lie. But I saw the flash of guilt in his eyes before he looked away. He hadn't expected me to be awake. He didn't know I was still listening. I didn't confront him. I didn't say a word. Instead, I turned around and walked down the hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. I pretended to be asleep that night. Pretended the pit in my stomach didn't exist. Pretended the knot tightening in my chest wasn't there. But I knew what I had to do. A few days later, while I was grocery shopping, a family friend, Sarah, caught up with me. She was Melissa's best friend, always in and out of the house. She leaned in close, her voice low. "I don't want to scare you, Esther," she said. "But you need to be careful. Derek. He's planning to push you out legally. I overheard him talking about it. About taking the house." I blinked. The world seemed to slow. My stomach churned, but I kept my face still. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "He wants this house. He wants to make it his own, Esther. And he's going to make it difficult for you to stay." My breath caught. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. But in that moment something clicked inside me. I knew I had to prepare. The very next day, I went into the living room, pretending to adjust a picture on the wall. I'd placed my phone on the bookshelf in plain view, set to record. And that's when Derek's voice came from the kitchen, low and clear, talking to someone on the other end of the line. I stood frozen, heart pounding. I'd only meant to catch a snippet, but what I overheard. "Yeah, I'll handle it. We'll get the paperwork filed next week. I'll transfer the property taxes to her name. Make it all legal. She'll never know." I felt the floor drop out beneath me. Taxes. Derek thought he was outsmarting me. He was trying to manipulate the system, push me aside, but he didn't know what he'd just done. He didn't know he'd handed me the power. Full power. I wasn't just a burden anymore. I was the one holding the cards. And now I could make my next move. Kept recording. Every conversation. Every slip-up. Every sign. He kept talking about moving things forward, trying to pressure me, but I held my ground. He never suspected a thing. Not for a second. But the truth was I had something now. Something he couldn't take back. And as the days passed, as the silence stretched between us, I knew that one day, soon, there would be no turning back. The more I tried to speak up, the less they listened. Melissa had always been close, but over time, the space between us grew wider. She would roll her eyes, mutter under her breath when I pointed out the truth. "Mom, you're being dramatic," she'd say. "You're overthinking it. He's just confident. You're blowing this out of proportion." Her words stung, but they weren't new. Derek had a way of twisting reality, making everyone think I was the problem. The dramatic one. The old, fragile woman who didn't understand how things worked anymore. But I saw the game. I saw what was happening. It all came to a head at Melissa's birthday party. Everyone was there. Family, friends, people who only knew what Derek wanted them to see. He stood up, glass in hand, a smile stretched across his face. He was the star of the show, always the star. He thanked the guests for coming and made some joke about how hard he'd worked to get everything just right. How he was the one who'd turned this house into a home. His home. He raised his glass, but the words that followed were what made the room freeze. None of this would have been possible without my hard work, he said. His gaze sweeping over the crowd, never once looking at me. This house, Umi, built it, made it into something. So grateful for it. For all I've done to get here. The room clapped. Laughter followed. I didn't clap. I didn't laugh. Instead, I sat still, watching his face as he basked in the admiration. The gasps came just a moment later. Smiled slowly. A calmness sweeping over me. I reached into my purse and pulled out the deed. The one Derek had no idea I had. I stood up. The noise quieted. Conversations dropped off. I walked to the center of the room, my eyes never leaving Derek's. The smiles, the chatter, the clinking of glasses faded to nothing. I pulled the deed from its envelope, slowly, deliberately. You mean my house? I said loud enough for the entire room to hear. There was a moment of stunned silence. No one said a word. Derek froze. His face twisted, then quickly tried to laugh it off. Oh, come on, Esther, don't be ridiculous. This is just a joke, right? He forced a chuckle, eyes darting around the room. Everyone, let's not make this awkward. It's just your old house. You know, the maid's house. He said it like it was nothing. Like it didn't matter. But it mattered. I saw the change in the room. Felt it. For the first time, Derek wasn't the one controlling the narrative. For the first time, he wasn't the one with the power. I held the deed high, letting everyone see it. I'm not the maid, Derek. This is my house. There was no laughter now. Only the soft shuffle of people shifting in their seats, avoiding eye contact. Derek's smile faltered, and in that second I saw it. The cracks in his mask. The fear. The uncertainty. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I've been quiet for too long, I said, my voice steady. But the room could feel the weight of it. You may think you've fooled everyone. But not anymore. Derek sputtered, his face reddening, trying to laugh it off again. But the truth was out now. The cards were on the table. And the audience. They weren't on his side anymore. I could see the weight of his guilt settling over him, pulling him down. His words stammered. You don't know what you're talking about, Esther. This is just. But I was done. The truth was louder than any of his empty words. Derek's laughter had died, and for the first time he wasn't in control. His smirk faltered, replaced by confusion, then panic. I could feel the power shift. I didn't need to say another word. The deed had spoken for me. But there was more to reveal. I reached into my bag once more, slowly, deliberately. The sound of the rustling papers was like a drumbeat in the silence. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting. I pulled out the envelope, thick and official. The kind that made everyone uneasy when it was opened. Legal documents. The room stiffened. I could almost hear the collective breath being held as I unfolded the papers. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone, but especially on Derek. His face was already changing, sweat starting to bead on his forehead, his hands twitching at his sides. I told you, Derek, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. I'm not the maid. I'm not your burden. I'm the one who owns this house. I held the papers up, letting the room see the bold, official text. Here it is, Derek. The mortgage, the deed. All of it's mine. And as of today, you are no longer a part of it. Derek's expression twisted as the realization hit him. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I could hear the frantic pulse of my own heartbeat, but I was calm. I had known this moment would come. I had prepared for it. Everything had been set in motion long before this evening. This was the moment where everything shifted. The moment I took back control. Now it was time. I walked toward Derek, holding the papers and the keys in my hand. His face was turning pale, and his eyes darted between the papers in my hand and my unshaken expression. "I've been more than patient with you," I said softly, but my words rang out. "I gave you my home. I gave you a chance. But you've abused it. So now, Derek, this is yours." I handed him the keys. The weight of them was heavier than it had ever been before. The weight of the truth. He reached for them, his hand shaking, but I didn't let go immediately. I held the keys for just a moment longer. "Good luck with the mortgage," I said, my voice cold, final. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His smirk was completely gone now, replaced with a frantic look of disbelief. I watched as his fingers closed around the keys, but they were no longer symbols of victory. They were symbols of his defeat. I turned without a word, without a glance, and walked out of the room. The sound of my footsteps was the last thing I heard before I stepped out into the night air. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long was finally gone. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew that Derek would never have the power over me again. As I walked away from the house, I felt a strange peace. The house wasn't just a building. It wasn't about the bricks or the mortar. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my life, my power. And I had done it. For myself. For my grandchildren. For everyone who had ever been underestimated. But most of all, I did it for the woman I used to be. The woman who deserved better. The woman who had given everything, and now was finally taking back what was hers. A full year had passed. The sea still whispered its secrets each morning, and Esther had learned to listen. She danced twice a week now. Her garden was alive with color. Her neighbors knew her by name. Peace had settled around her like a soft shawl, one she didn't realize she'd been longing for. One quiet afternoon, as the sun filtered through her kitchen window, a small envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Just her name, written in the shaky handwriting of a child. She sat down, heart beating just a little faster. Carefully she opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Letter. "Dear Grandma, miss you. I don't know why you left, but I heard things. I know what they did was wrong. I wanted you to know that I love you. I think about your pancakes. And your stories. Hope you're happy. I hope you're smiling again. Love, Elijah." Esther stared at the letter, her fingers trembling slightly as she read it again. And again. A soft smile formed on her face, one that reached all the way into her eyes. Slowly, deliberately, she stood up, walked to her bookshelf, and slid open her journal. Between 2 pages filled with pressed flower petals and personal notes, she tucked Elijah's letter carefully inside. No fanfare. No need for revenge. No desire to look back. The pain she had carried, the betrayal, the heartache, it hadn't followed her here. It had been washed away, piece by piece, by the tide of a life reclaimed. As she closed the journal and returned it to its place, the narration closed with a gentle truth. She lost a home but found her peace. They thought they were clever. They thought the quiet old woman in the background was just the help. But Esther was never just anything. She was the thread that held the family together. The one who gave when no one was looking. The one they mistook for weak, until they learned what quiet strength really looked like. So now the house feels cold. The rooms echo with the absence of the woman they once ignored. And somewhere a boy writes a letter. Because love always remembers. Have you ever been underestimated like Esther? What would you do if your own son-in-law called you the maid? They didn't see her power, until she walked away with all of it.